What happens when a Hollywood legend, known for his no-nonsense grit, steps onto the stage of a talk show host famous for his charm, but notorious for pushing boundaries? Harrison Ford thought he was walking into the Late Late Show with James Corden for a quick promotional chat, but what unfolded was a verbal brawl that had the audience gasping, producers panicking, and the internet ready to explode. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong. It was a public showdown that ripped through the polished veneer of late-night TV, exposing raw tensions and clashing egos. Subscribe and drop a comment, because this story gets wilder with every word, and you won't believe where it ends. Harrison Ford walked onto the set, his weathered charm intact, offering a quick wave to the cheering crowd, his half-smile hinting at the Indiana Jones swagger that had defined decades of his career. James Corden bounced up from his desk, clapping enthusiastically, welcoming Harrison with a loud, "The legend himself." The audience roared, holding up signs for Han Solo and Blade Runner. But as Harrison took his seat, adjusting his jacket, Corden's grin carried a slight edge, like he was gearing up for more than a friendly chat. Corden kicked off with his usual energy, thanking the audience, cracking a joke about Harrison's timeless cool, then pivoting to the reason for the visit, a promotional appearance for a new project. But he quickly shifted gears, pulling out a tablet with a flourish, saying, "I saw an interview you did recently, Harrison, and you had some thoughts about talk shows, didn't you? Something about how we're all just chasing clicks and not telling real stories. Care to unpack that for us?" The crowd hushed, sensing a shift, as Harrison raised an eyebrow, leaning back, his voice gruff but calm, replying, "I think you're misquoting me, James. I said some folks in this business care more about going viral than connecting with people. Didn't name names, didn't point fingers." Corden laughed, a bit too loudly, waving a hand saying, "Oh, come on, Harrison. Don't play coy. You're a legend. You've got opinions. You're telling me you think shows like mine are just fluff, no substance, just chasing likes?" Harrison's jaw tightened, but he kept his cool, responding, "I think audiences deserve more than hot takes and cheap laughs, James. I've always tried to tell stories that mean something, not just stir up noise." The audience murmured, caught off guard by the sudden tension, as Corden leaned forward, his smile sharpening, saying, "That's rich, Harrison. You're out here playing heroes, saving galaxies, but you're calling me out for not being deep enough. Tell me, when did you become the gatekeeper of what's real?" Harrison leaned in, his voice steady, replying, "I'm not gatekeeping anything. I'm saying people tune in for connection, not to be lectured or mocked. You've got a platform. Use it to lift people up, not tear them down." Corden chuckled, shaking his head, saying, "Tear people down? That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? I mean, we're having fun here." "Right, folks, but maybe you're too busy being a serious actor to get the vibe?" The crowd laughed nervously, unsure where this was going, as Harrison shot back, "Fun's great, James, but when you're poking fun at people's lives, their struggles, their beliefs, it's not just a joke, it's a choice, and it's one you make every night." Corden's grin faltered, but he pressed on, his tone sharper, saying, "Hold on. You're acting like you're above this, like you're not part of the same Hollywood machine. You're out there making millions playing the same rugged hero. What makes you the expert on what's authentic?" Harrison's eyes narrowed, his voice gruff, replying, "I grew up working odd jobs, James. I was a carpenter before I ever got a big break. I know what it's like to scrape by. I don't pretend to speak for everyone, but I respect the audience enough not to treat their lives like a punchline." The audience clapped softly, some nodding, as Corden waved a hand saying, "Oh, the carpenter story, we've all heard it. But let's be real. You're not exactly hammering nails anymore, are you? You're living the high life. So why lecture me about authenticity?" Harrison leaned forward, his voice firm, saying, "I'm not lecturing. I'm calling it like I see it. You invite people on, set them up for a chat, then turn it into a game of gotcha. That's not real. That's just showbiz." The crowd shifted, sensing the conversation turning personal, as Corden leaned back, his voice taking on a mocking tone, saying, "Showbiz, that's the game you're in, Harrison. You can't sit there and act like you're above it. You're here promoting your movie, same as anyone. So maybe ease up on the high horse." Harrison's face hardened, but he kept his tone even, replying, "I'm here to talk about a story, not to play your game. You want to talk real. Let's talk about how you twist people's words to get a laugh. How you make fun of folks who don't fit your narrative." Corden's eyes widened, caught off guard, as he shot back, "Twist words? I'm just asking questions. Harrison, that's my job. But maybe you're not used to being challenged. Maybe you're too big a star for that." The audience gasped, the tension spiking, as Harrison responded, "I've been challenged plenty, James. But there's a difference between a challenge and an ambush. You brought me here under one pretense. Now you're trying to make me the bad guy." Corden laughed, a forced sound, saying, "Ambush? That's a bit much, don't you think? I mean, you're the one who came out swinging with your comments about talk shows. I'm just giving you a chance to explain. So go ahead, tell us how we should all be more like you." Harrison shook his head, his voice low, saying, "I'm not saying be like me. I'm saying be honest. Stop turning every issue into a skit. Stop mocking people's values just because they don't match yours. That's not entertainment, it's just lazy." The crowd murmured, some clapping, as Corden's smile vanished, his voice rising, saying, "Lazy? That's what you think this is. I work hard to connect with my audience, to make them laugh, to make them feel something. And you're sitting there judging me like you've got all the answers?" Harrison leaned back, his tone calm but cutting, replying, "I don't have all the answers, but I know the difference between connecting and performing. You're performing right now, James, and it's not for the audience, it's for you." The exchange grew heated, the audience fully engaged as Corden pushed further, saying, "Performing? That's what you do, Harrison. You play the same gruff hero over and over. So don't lecture me about authenticity when you're just reading lines for a paycheck." Harrison's hands gripped the armrests, his voice steady but intense, replying, "I read lines to tell stories, to make people feel, think, escape. You use your mic to make people laugh at each other, to pick fights for clicks. That's the difference, James, and you know it." Corden's face flushed, his voice sharp, saying, "Pick fights? I'm just doing my job. Asking the tough questions. But maybe you can't handle it. Maybe you're too big for this little show." Harrison stood, his chair scraping, his voice firm, saying, "I can handle tough, James. What I won't handle is being set up. You invited me here to talk, not to be your punching bag. So if you want a real conversation, let's have one. Otherwise, I'm done playing." The audience gasped, the producers froze, and Corden's eyes widened. The stage set for a showdown that was only just beginning. Harrison Ford loomed on the Late Late Show stage, his boots planted firmly, his weathered hands clenched, the air crackling from his bold stand against James Corden's ambush. The audience caught in a hush, their anticipation palpable as they waited for the next salvo. Corden, his usual cheer strained, hopped behind his desk, flashing a quick grin to the crowd, saying, "All right, Harrison, you're throwing punches, calling me out for playing games. But let's keep it real. You're the one who started this, saying talk shows like mine are just noise. So why don't you sit and tell us how to do it better, huh?" Ford shook his head, his voice like rough timber, replying, "I'm not here to play teacher, James. I said what I said. You've got a platform, millions watching. But you're using it to stir up fights, not start conversations. That's your choice, not mine." The crowd clapped, some cheering, as Corden's smile twitched, his hands waving, saying, "Stir up fights? That's a bit harsh, don't you think? I'm just asking questions, giving the fans what they want. But maybe you're too big a star to get how this works now?" Ford stepped closer, his tone sharp, answering, "I get it fine, James. You invite me here to talk, then hit me with a setup. That's not questions. That's a trap, and I'm not biting." Corden spun around his desk, his voice pitching up, saying, "A trap? Come on, Harrison. You're being dramatic. You threw shade at my whole industry, saying we're all fake, chasing viral moments, so go ahead. Tell us how to be authentic like you. What's the secret sauce of Harrison Ford? Ford's hands dropped to his sides, his voice steady, replying, no secret, just honesty. You've got a mic, use it to say something real, not to dunk on people's lives, their choices, their struggles. You call that fun, I call it cheap, and the audience deserves better. The crowd roared, some standing, as Corden scoffed, his hands flying, saying, cheap. That's what you're calling my show. I'm out here every night, making people laugh, feel good, while you're off playing the same grumpy hero for millions. So don't act like you're above this, you're in the same game, pal. Ford's face stayed calm, but his voice cut deep, answering, I tell stories to connect, to make people think. You turn their problems into punchlines, mock their beliefs for a quick laugh. That's not the same game, James, and you know it. Corden's laugh was forced, his hands slamming the desk, saying, mock their beliefs. You're acting like I'm some villain, Harrison. I'm giving the audience truth, fun, heart. But you're sitting there judging me like you've got all the answers. So tell me, when did you become the guru of what's real? Ford took a step forward, his voice like steel, replying, I'm no guru. I'm just a guy who respects the people watching. I grew up hustling, fixing furniture, scraping by. I don't forget that. But you sit here, joking about their rent, their jobs, acting like you're their buddy when you're just selling a show. The audience clapped louder, some shouting support, as Corden's face reddened, his voice sharp, saying, selling a show. That's what you think I'm doing. I'm out here sharing stories, lifting people up, and you're calling me a fake. Maybe you're the one who's forgotten where he came from, Mr. Hollywood legend. Ford shook his head, his tone firm, answering, I haven't forgotten a thing, James. I know what it's like to struggle, to fight for a shot. But you're up there every night, turning real issues into skits. That's not lifting up, that's just cashing in. Corden stepped closer, his voice dripping with sarcasm, saying, cashing in? That's rich, Harrison. You've been cashing in since Indiana Jones, playing the same tough guy for decades. So don't lecture me about real when you're just reading someone else's lines for a paycheck. Ford's hands tensed, his voice low, replying, those lines tell stories, James. They make people feel. Think, dream. You're out here making fun of their politics, their values, just to get a reaction. That's not real talk. That's just noise, and it's on you. The crowd erupted, some cheering, as Corden's eyes flashed, his hands gesturing wildly, saying, noise, you're calling my show noise. I'm out here every night, pouring my soul into this. And you're acting like you're above it? Maybe you're just too old school to get how this works now. Ford's voice stayed calm, but his words cut, answering, old school or not. I know the difference between real and fake. You brought me here to talk, then made it a fight. That's your move, James, not mine, and I'm not playing along. Corden's voice cracked, his hands pounding the desk, saying, a fight. You're the one who came out swinging, Harrison, saying we're all lazy, fake. So why don't you just admit it? You think you're better than me, better than this show, better than the audience. Ford pushed his chair back, the scrape loud, his voice final, replying, I don't think I'm better than anyone, James. I think the audience deserves better than this. You set me up, you made it personal, and I'm done with your circus. You want a show, you've got one, but I'm not your act. The crowd held its breath, the producers froze, and Corden's face twisted, the confrontation poised on a razor's edge, with the fallout still to come. All right, Harrison, you're walking away now, calling my show a circus. That's real classy. Why don't you just admit you can't handle a real conversation? You're dodging the heat. James Corden shouted, his voice sharp, trying to reclaim control. I'm not dodging anything, James. I'm done with your setup. You brought me here to talk, then turned it into a fight for clicks. That's on you, not me. Harrison Ford fired back, his words steady, cutting through the tension. Oh, come on, you're acting like some martyr. I'm just doing my job, asking questions, giving the fans what they want. But maybe you're too big for this, too big for my audience. Corden snapped, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Your audience deserves better than this, James. They're not here for your gotcha games. They want real talk. Not you mocking their lives for a laugh, Ford replied, his voice firm, unyielding. Mocking their lives, that's what you think I'm doing. I'm out here every night, sharing stories, making people feel something, and you're calling me a fake. Maybe you're the one who's lost touch. Corden shot back, his words rushed, defensive. Lost touch? I've been in this game longer than you've been on air, James. I know what it means to connect, to tell stories that matter. Not just stir up drama for your next viral clip, Ford countered, his tone calm but pointed. Viral clip? You're so out of it, Harrison. This is how it works now. People want the spark, the truth. Not some old-school lecture about storytelling. So why don't you just own it? You think you're better than me. Corden said, his voice rising, almost desperate. I don't think I'm better. I think you're wasting a chance. You've got a platform, millions watching. And you're using it to dunk on people, to make their struggles a joke. That's not truth. That's just noise, Ford replied, his words deliberate, sharp. Noise? You're calling my show noise. I pour my heart out every night. And you're sitting there judging me, acting like you're the king of authenticity. Corden snapped, his voice cracking under the strain. Authenticity's not about shouting loudest, James. It's about being honest. You invited me here, set me up, made it personal. That's not a show. That's a stunt. And I'm not your prop, Ford said, his voice low, final. You're not my prop. You're just scared to face the heat, Harrison. You threw shade at my whole industry, and now you're running when I call you out. Real brave, Corden taunted, trying to regain the upper hand. Running? I face tougher than you, James. I'm walking because I respect myself too much to play your game. You want a fight, you've got one. But I'm not throwing punches for your ratings. Ford shot back, his words steady, unwavering. Respect yourself. That's a laugh. You're out here playing the same hero role for decades. Telling me I'm fake. Maybe you're the one hiding behind a script, Corden said, his tone biting, accusatory. I hide behind nothing, James. I tell stories to make people feel, think, dream. You're out here turning their lives into a skit, mocking their values to get a reaction. That's the difference, Ford replied, his voice cutting, precise. Mocking their values, I'm giving them truth, Harrison. I'm showing them who you really are, not some carpenter-turned-star myth you keep selling. Corden fired back, his words sharp, personal. Truth? You wouldn't know truth if it hit you, James. You brought up my past. My work, to make me look small. That's not truth. That's a cheap shot. And it proves everything I've said about you, Ford said, his tone calm but devastating. Cheap shot? I'm just asking questions, doing my job. But maybe you're too fragile to handle it. Too used to everyone kissing up to the great Harrison Ford. Corden snapped, his voice trembling with frustration. Fragile? I've taken hits my whole life, James. But I don't need to tear others down to feel big. You set this up. You made it personal. And now you're mad I'm calling it what it is. A circus, Ford replied, his words like a hammer, unyielding. A circus? You keep saying that. But you came on my show, Harrison, my stage. And now you're acting like you're above it. Maybe you should just go back to your movies and leave the real talk to me. Corden shouted, his voice shrill, desperate. Real talk, James. Real talk is honest, not this. You crossed a line and done. I'm walking because I don't need to play your game to know who I am, Ford said, his voice final, resolute. Fine, go, Harrison, walk off. Show everyone you can't handle a real moment. You're proving my point. You're all talk, no substance, Corden called out, his words echoing as Ford's footsteps sounded toward the exit. I'm proving my point, James. You had a chance to have a real conversation, to show people we can disagree without tearing each other apart. But you chose this. You chose to be the guy who needs to win. Not the guy who listens, Ford replied, his voice steady, powerful, leaving no room for rebuttal. You're wrong, Harrison. I listen. I connect. I give people what they want. And you're just too stubborn to see it, Corden shouted, his voice fading as Ford's steps grew louder. What people want is honesty, James, not your drama. Remember that when you're watching the clips of this blow-up online. Ford said, his final words ringing out, leaving Corden silent. The show cutting to commercial as the fallout began. The internet already lighting up with the clash that would define both their legacies, with one question lingering: who really won? The clash had ended, but its reverberations would echo for years. A defining moment that exposed the hollowness of turning honest exchange into a public spectacle. A testament to the enduring strength of integrity over staged provocation. Harrison Ford had arrived to share a story, but departed as the victor in a clash of values, his principles unshaken, his stature not only preserved, but amplified, proving that standing firm for truth and respect could outshine any spotlight. James Corden, however, forfeited something priceless that night. The trust of his viewers, his jovial persona marred by an overreach of ego that would linger over his career. Whenever this showdown is replayed, in viral snippets or heated discussions, the world will recall who championed genuine dialogue and who opted for the role of antagonist, who exited with honor and who stood amidst the debris of their own creation. A legacy that will endure long past the studio lights and shape their places in the public's memory forever.
Thank you for watching our channel Modern Stories. If you liked our video, you should subscribe for more amazing videos like this. Have a healthy and happy day. See you in the next one.